Catherine, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on this topic. And I was just looking, I spoke on the last occasion, I think is February 22, in relation to the Higher Education Authority Bill. And I had a lot of time there to discuss where we're going for third level education. And Minister, I welcome this speech and what has been set out in the priorities. However, I have a huge problem with the title, the power of higher education, research and skills as an economic enabler in a changing world. That certainly is a factor, but I wouldn't have that as a title to a speech I'd be given on the importance of third level education to enable our people to develop their full potential in whatever sphere they go, and that will drive the economy rather than the other way around. And this narrow focus on the economy, and I'm from Galway and I want a thriving city, and I recognise the importance of industry. However, there must be a better vision and a more enabling vision if we're really to make words mean something. We've declared a climate emergency over how long ago now? I think it's 19, that long ago. We supposedly have learned from COVID, and we've supposedly learned that the ongoing consumption model, the neoliberal model, is endangering our planet. So within that, third level must be looked at in a completely different way. And while I welcome that the Minister has set out 4 things, again he's put to research and economic enabler as number 1, high quality, accessible higher education, absolutely. And if I have a chance, I come back to access, because that's a huge problem in terms of costs and accommodation. And he does acknowledge that further on. To expand pathways to skills and apprenticeships, wonderful in theory, on the ground I'll come back to it. And then to promote curiosity, again, it's certainly very, very weak to promote curiosity and the pursuit of knowledge as a public good. I suppose we're getting there a little bit with that language. What I would like to see is education for education's sake within the third level institution that ultimately will benefit society by making us critical thinkers. And if we've learned anything from the banking inquiry, is that we need critical thinkers. The last thing we need now is consensus mentality. We see that in relation to Europe and an inability to call out genocide in Gaza. And I'm just picking one area in the world. A consensus mentality was what Nyberg said was behind the financial crisis in Ireland. Nobody spoke out, nobody stood out from the crowd or said, this is wrong. So that consensus mentality. And I am actually very worried that that consensus mentality is being enshrined in our third level institution. Maybe I'm a little bit too cynical, but I remember my time on the public accounts and the 7 presidents coming before us, as I call them, the Magnificent 7. They happened to all be men, and they did not inspire me with what I would have expected. I understand that things have slightly changed, and in Galway we got a new president that sorted out the gender inequality cases. Remember the Sheehy Skeffington book, the 3 conditions, and the new president sorted that out. Unfortunately, he's gone and he left early. So I won't spend any more time on that, but it's certainly something we need to discuss as a society, what our universities are there for, and to bridge the gap that exists between town and gown, as it was called in Galway, and that the universities are open to everybody. And as you know, I come from a large family in Galway, and we've had the benefit of having the university beside us, and we've also had the benefit of a whole range of skills in our house from a large family. So I've seen it from every point of view. In relation to Galway City, and it has already been mentioned by, I think, a previous speaker from East Galway, the new campus in Galway, it's a matter of disappointment to me. First of all, it's a fantastic concept that we need an adult campus in Galway, and it should have been done years ago. The GRETB have the land. There's absolutely no obstacle whatsoever. They have the vision, and they came forward with that vision. And the government, notwithstanding their sweet words about apprenticeships and so on, told them to go back and resubmit another plan, reduce down to 10,000 square metres, I think, and reduce their whole vision. And what went into the second phase, Minister, and you might remember this lately, apprenticeships went into the second phase. Apprenticeships, which should be top of the list, because of having to restrict their vision. Under government direction, apprenticeships have gone into phase 2, God knows when that will be, and also the Irish language and the possibilities and the obligations that are there under Acna Chonga Efigula to upskill everyone, but particular public and civil servants and all of our services, gone into phase 2. And then in relation to the ATUs, and I was up in the ATU in Castlebar, and I've been in Galway, and they're fantastic, wonderful, wonderful students with coming forward with a questioning mind, which is what, if I was to employ somebody in the morning, it wouldn't be on the basis of their CV, I can tell you, or somebody telling me how great they are. It would be on their ability to say, I actually don't know that, but I'm willing to learn, and I've an open mind. That's what I would put a premium on and a value on, even in my own work here in my office. Somebody that has the courage to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. And so if we go back then to Galway, I don't know if you have any information, Minister, in relation to, there's a vacancy there almost a year now. The previous president is gone and we have no new president. And again, the debate on the last occasion when we employed the new president was Irish language was really a limiting factor, and we couldn't have a condition that the president would have Irish, because that would limit our availability of the talent that's out there. And the ironic thing was, when we got the new president, he was a fluent Irish speaker. So it went against everything that had been said. And if you had an update on that, if you had any influence in relation to the campus in Galway for the adult education, I'd appreciate that, Minister. I know you come from a background of teaching yourself, and it makes absolutely sense to go with the full vision. The amount of buildings that are being rented by the GRETB in Galway is just shocking, trying to provide a service on every level. And then the vulnerability of our third level education generally was brought into acute focus with Trump's recent announcements about third level education. And we realise how vulnerable something that we take for granted is. And then with the government's announcement that they're going to look at paying higher salaries to attract leading academics. And while I might welcome that on one level, maybe we could look at the talent within our own universities at the moment that we're utterly wasting because they're on precarious hours, they have no security, and they can't actually shine. And yet the irony of this is we're going to go forward, pay enormous salaries, and the government are going to pay a third or a half, up to a half of the salary. And we don't see the irony in that, while having our own PhD students and our own masters all absolutely struggling because of insecurity and no contracts whatsoever. In relation to the, I've said that, in relation, just finally, I have a concern about universities not speaking out on issues that they should, and creating an atmosphere where questions are allowed and that it's not disloyal. And if we, because of funding problems, and I see there's a commitment to looking at funding, which is a huge problem for universities, because they're forced on other roles. I saw in Galway down the private foundation role, which determined which buildings went up on the campus, but clearly not student accommodation. And so the problem of student accommodation was thrown out onto the town, and still is a major problem because it's all based on profit, and the sites are being picked in unsuitable areas because there's no overall thinking that student accommodation by and large should be on campuses. And Galway was some example of where a foundation, members of which were Goldman Sachs and Coca-Cola, and those foundations, that foundation is still there, determining the agenda in the college as opposed to student accommodation and education for education.